Welcome to this new special video in which we're going to talk a little bit about the subsidized car leasing program. This program was introduced in France in 2024 as a complement to the electric car purchase incentive program. And on paper, the promise is quite appealing, allowing lower-income French people to switch to electric cars in exchange for just a few euros per month. On paper, it sounds great, but in reality, the subsidized car leasing program is probably the worst way to finance a new vehicle. In today's video, I'm going to explain why the subsidized car leasing program should absolutely be avoided, and how you can, and especially why you must, use another financing method to buy a new electric car. For that, in this video, we're going to go over the different problems that social leasing presents. Whether it's for you, the future drivers of electric vehicles bought through the subsidized car leasing program, or later on for the automotive industry as well. Because believe it or not, the subsidized car leasing program is quite a challenge to manage. It's a big issue for buyers, drivers, dealerships, and also for car brands. Today is a special episode on the subsidized car leasing program. I hope you find it interesting and show your support if you do. By leaving a like and boosting this video, that's really the biggest support you can give to my channel and to this video. In terms of visibility, if you want as many people as possible to be informed about the issues with the subsidized car leasing program, don't hesitate. Remember to subscribe for future videos, and also feel free to leave a comment to share your thoughts with us. Perhaps you or your loved ones have switched to an electric car through the subsidized car leasing program. If so, feel free to share your positive or negative experiences with this system. To give you a quick overview of the social leasing program, as I mentioned, it's a subsidy to help you buy an electric car. It was introduced in 2024 and was modified in 2025. To benefit from it, there are several conditions you need to meet. You obviously have to live in France, live more than 15 kilometers from your workplace, and use your personal car to get there. Or drive more than 8,000 kilometers per year with your personal car as part of your professional activity. On top of that, and this is probably the most important, there are income conditions. To be eligible, you must have an annual reference tax income per household share that is less than or equal to 16,300 euros. So basically, you need to earn less than 1,400 euros per month to be sure you qualify. If you meet all the requirements, you can submit your social leasing application and benefit from assistance of up to 7,000 euros. This amount will be deducted from the price of a leased vehicle, whether it's a lease with an option to buy or a long-term rental. The car itself must meet several eligibility criteria, such as not costing more than 200 euros per month. There is a second criterion, and this one did not exist in this form in 2024. But now the car in question must meet a certain Ecoscore level. The Ecoscore is the car's energy label, which will be calculated based in particular on its place of production, but also on the origin of its components. The purpose of this criterion is to prevent social leasing money from being used to finance cars that are not made in France and, more broadly, not made in Europe. Let me give a small example to illustrate my point. In 2024, this criterion did not exist. At that time, social leasing was financed by French taxpayers. And that year, in 2024, 95% of the vehicles that were sold through social leasing were manufactured abroad, which means indirectly that only 5% of the annual social leasing budget was reinvested in the industry, and more broadly, in the French economy. All the rest went into the pockets of other countries. That alone is scandalous, but it's just one minor issue with social leasing. The first problem is the list of eligible vehicles. I'll show you the list of eligible vehicles, but keep in mind that this list may have changed by the time you watch this video. But there's a serious problem with versatility. What I mean by that is, when you look at this list, the car that offers the most range is the Peugeot 208 electric with a WLTP range of 433 kilometers. We won't focus much on the WLTP protocol, but we know very well that these 433 kilometers are almost impossible to reach, that you almost have to divide that number by 2 to get the real highway range. For most people, that's enough for daily commuting, but not for longer trips like weekend getaways or vacations. You forget about it right away, which means that in reality, you have 3 options. The first is to give up on long trips and spend the rest of your life traveling only in neighboring regions. The second option is to temporarily rent another vehicle for your long trips or to take public transportation. In either case, it means you have an extra budget to spend, which can quickly add up, especially when you see the price of a short-term rental or a high-speed train ticket in the summer. Or a third option is to keep another internal combustion vehicle on the side, which will allow you to make your long trips without any trouble. But that means you'll have to pay for insurance and maintenance for a second car. Not sure that's financially worthwhile or even sustainable when you have a tight budget and you're among lower-income French people eligible for social leasing. The first big problem with social leasing is the list of eligible cars. As long as there's no eligible electric vehicle that can actually do 600 km on the highway, social leasing will force you to make decisions and choices you wouldn't have made otherwise. But that's clearly not the only problem. And I'd even say it's not the biggest problem with social leasing. There's another problem, which is that in reality, there are a whole bunch of hidden fees that are absolutely not highlighted by dealerships and car salespeople. When you sign your social leasing contract, this social leasing is either a lease with a purchase option or a long-term lease. I talked about this in another video a few days ago. On average, in France, at the end of a lease with purchase option or a long-term lease, you have to pay an additional 1,200 euros in return fees. That's an average. Sometimes it will only cost you a few euros and sometimes much more than that. These additional return fees can be caused by several things. The first is mileage, if you drove more kilometers than what was planned in your contract. And generally, in social leasing contracts, it's 12,000 kilometers per year over 3 years and 12,000 kilometers per year. It adds up very, very quickly. It's an average of 32 kilometers per day, but it can also be because there are scratches on the vehicle or on the rims, or because you didn't keep up with the maintenance schedule. There are a whole bunch of things, and honestly, it's extremely rare to finish your LOA or LLD contract without having some extra fees. In France, ending a 36-month contract costs about 1,200 euros on average. You should budget an extra 400 euros per year for this, similar to insurance, as many people don't realize this. Even though on paper, comprehensive insurance isn't mandatory, it's very often required by financing organizations, rental companies, banks, and dealerships. And comprehensive insurance most of the time still costs a lot more than regular insurance. I'll give a quick example with the Peugeot 206 I mentioned earlier. In my personal case, I had to do a simulation for insurance prices. The best rate I was offered was about 300 euros per year for third-party coverage, and the best rate I was offered for comprehensive insurance. And with only the bare minimum coverage, without assistance or anything like that, it was 600 euros per year, double the price. So a vehicle initially offered at 135 euros per month through the social leasing scheme actually ends up costing me more overall. By adding 30 euros per month on average for return fees and 50 euros per month for insurance, that's 215 euros per month. That's quite a budget when you earn around 1,400 euros per month. In reality, social leasing costs much more than advertised in commercials, but that's not the main issue. The biggest problem is that at the end of your social leasing contract, you don't own the car. You have two options. Either buy back your car at the end of your LOA, which means taking out another loan for that, or you manage to save up the necessary amount during the previous 3 years of your LOA, which is clearly not easy on a tight budget. You're in the situation where you don't want to buy back your car, or else in a long-term rental, and in that case, you're stuck renting forever. Just like with a standard lease or long-term rental that isn't part of social leasing, financially, in the long run, it's much more advantageous to go through a traditional loan with a bank. With this amount of 200 euros per month, you can probably borrow 10,000 to 15,000 euros over 5 to 10 years. And at those rates, once again, I'll use the same example. You can find Peugeot 208 EVs, which you will eventually fully own at the end of your loan. And you can either resell it to recover its residual value or keep it. You also won't need to pay hundreds of euros monthly for your social leasing. So far in this video, I've only discussed the problems with social leasing as far as car buyers are concerned. But social leasing also represents a significant problem for the automotive industry. The main issue is the massive depreciation of electric car prices. Now, for us as customers, it's great to pay less for our electric cars. But for dealerships, it's a real problem. The problem is that Peugeot, to use my example again, sells regular 208 EVs outside of social leasing. The model was released in 2019, so some customers have already traded theirs in for a new car. So Peugeot ends up with used 208 EVs to resell, obviously offered at a lower price than a new model. I'll give you an example in a moment. 12,000 euros for a used electric 208. The price for a new electric 208 is 21,000 euros. 21,000 euros minus the 7,000 euros from the social leasing aid makes it 14,000 euros. That means Peugeot dealerships end up offering their customers new cars. Thanks to or because of social leasing, depending on your view, these are sold at nearly the same price as used cars. If we forget the argument of eternal leasing, what customer would want to buy a used car at the same price as a new one? As a result, used electric 208 EVs. But that's also the case for other models eligible for social leasing, which stay much longer in dealership inventories. And dealerships are forced to slash their prices by several hundred or even several thousand euros to try to find buyers for them. And all of this is without mentioning the future of returns from the social leasing program, which will start next year. As I was saying, social leasing started in 2024. Add 2 to 3 years based on contract length starting next year. Expect a surge of electric 208S C3S and other models available for social leasing. They will come back to the dealerships, which will further swell inventory that is already far too high. As a result, dealerships will have to offer even bigger discounts on used models to try to clear out their stock. So whether you're a seller or a buyer of electric cars, social leasing is very rarely the right solution. Nothing beats a good old bank loan or, of course, paying cash if you can. Everything else is literally like throwing money out the window. I think we've covered everything. I gave you a quick summary in 10 minutes. I hope this video made things clearer, and if so, please show it by leaving a like, subscribing for the next videos, and maybe even supporting through the join button. With that, I'll see you tomorrow for the next one. Ciao!